along the way, we're making these efforts to be more sustainable. Some of them are very meaningful, and this is what we're going to do. It's a little bit harder. And then some of them were just natural. This sustainable aspect makes the most sense.
You're listening to the Good Dirt Podcast. This is a place where we dig into the nitty-gritty of sustainable living through food, fashion, and lifestyle.
And we're your hosts, Mary and Emma Kingsley, the mother and daughter founder team of Lady Farmer. We're sowing seeds of slow living through our community platform, events, and online marketplace.
We started this podcast as a means to share the wealth of information and quality conversations that we're having in our world as we dream up and deliver ways for each of us to live into the new paradigm, one that is regenerative, balanced, and whole.
We want to put the microphone in front of the voices that need to be heard the most right now, the farmers, the dreamers, the designers, and the doers.
So come cultivate a better world with us. We're so glad you're here. Now, let's dig in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on The Good Dirt. We're into November now, and as always, as the year wanes, we find the cultural mindset moving quickly towards that span of weeks that has been coined as the holidays. And even as the natural world signals a quieting, a retreat from the exuberance of the season of growth and light, the consumer culture calls us in quite the opposite direction. If you're drawn to the idea of a slower, more sustainable lifestyle, you most likely already have a sense of this tension, and maybe you would appreciate some support along the way of this journey. If this is you, we invite you to become a part of our community, the Almanac, where my daughter Emma and I share our own multi-generational journey in slow living through this podcast, through our extensive online archive of information and resources, our newsletter, gatherings, events, and our book, The Lady Farmer Guide to Slow Living. Just go to ladyfarmer.com to sign up, and while you're there, have a look around our Lady Farmer marketplace. It's full of carefully curated products chosen with the highest regard for all aspects of sustainability. And speaking of the upcoming holidays and the many decisions we all have to make regarding our purchasing, today's guest, Harrison Holditch, introduces us to Half Shell Vodka, a game-changing product in the sustainability world. At just 33 years old, Harrison has already made a significant impact in the spirits industry, pioneering innovative approaches that set Half Shell Vodka apart. Under Harrison's guidance, Half Shell Vodka has introduced sustainable practices that revolutionize their production process, partnering with local farmers to use spent grains as livestock feed and incorporating recycled oyster shells as part of their filtration system. Also, most impressively, Half Shell Vodka is the first U.S. spirit that is sold and served in a cardboard bottle. The bottle is 100% recyclable and made up of 94% recycled materials. It is the first of its kind in the country. Stick around to hear more about Harrison's story and the trajectory of this small family-based business that's modeling exciting possibilities in the industry. So here's Harrison Holditch of Half Shell Vodka coming to us from Santa Rosa Beach, Florida.
So my name's Harrison Holditch. I'm one of the co-founders of Distillery 98, which makes Half Shell Vodka. So we're the first spirit in the U.S. in a sustainable paper bottle. My elevator pitch is we started this when we were younger, 25, 26, me and my brother-in-law, small family company that we started. And this whole spirits and everything, the industry changes yearly. So we're always trying to adapt, always trying to find new things and be innovative. That's when we found this packaging specifically for our vodka, and it's been great getting it out there, kind of spreading awareness. We're just excited to be along for this ride because it starts with us, but the bottle itself is the main presenter, and it's so cool.
That's so neat. When you said paper bottle, I saw my mom's face go.
Oh my gosh. I want to hear all about that. But what's your background and your interests and things that happened to you along the way that might have led you here to
Yeah.
doing this particular thing?
My background's kind of all over the place. Entrepreneurship has always been in our family, whether on my dad's side, cousins, uncles, from event companies to starting their own laundry mats, hair care. I mean, it's kind of all over in the background of our family. And so, I've always had an interest of innovation and people creating things. And so it's always been there, trying to weave my way through this world. Coming out of college and not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do, I was writing at the time, went to school for writing and journalism, and obviously just fall in love with being able to put words on paper. That was right at the beginning of the whole podcasting and blogging and everything kind of finding their own way. I kind of dabbled in it a little bit, all the while, got to make money. So, having jobs everywhere from oil and gas industry in Texas to moving out to Colorado, where my sister lived at the time, and helping a buddy start a cannabis grow out there, a legal one in Denver. And, so I kind of touched little points in my life here and there. And I think that's really helped me navigate, things that get thrown at you and trying to adapt and figuring out where to go. So through that process, my brother-in-law, who is the head distiller for our product in Distillery 98, David Kapitanoff, we were making small batches. It's kind of like a sugar shine is what people call it. So you go to the store, press some oranges, get some pineapple juice, and distill that. We put some in barrels, and we were having fun with it, not selling it, kind of gifting it for Christmas or, here, try this. My friends came over, and, a big thing happened when we were kind of like, okay, it's a fun hobby. We don't know if this was what we really want to do with our lives. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. So we were at a wedding in Houston, and they had some beer that was brought in from Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, where we live now. We've been going there our whole life, family and friends. How cool is this? Here's that local beer from that local brewery that we're drinking in Houston, Texas at this beautiful museum and wedding. And so it was kind of like, hey, there could be something to this. This was back in 2015, 2014, where micro distilling was on the rise, but it wasn't like the microbreweries that everyone is accustomed to now. We're like, maybe there's an opportunity down in Florida to start one of these. The more we thought about it, the more we did our homework and research. It's very different from home distilling to saying, hey, I want to open a distillery. And we learned that, still learning that throughout this whole time. It was just kind of green light after green light. Like, if we don't find a good location, maybe it's not worth it. Found a great location right next to a local brewery. If we can't find something to make it out of that's reasonable, maybe this isn't the right thing. Well, we've got linked up with some farmers north of our county here in Florida. They're like, oh, we got some corn, and we're like, okay. It was just one thing after another that led us down this path to where we are now. It's been a great ride. I love being able to do it with my family. Love being able to do it with, there's about 5 of us at the distillery. Really good core team, all young, all ready to, kind of drive and do what needs to be done. The area we live in is beautiful. We're talking white sand beaches, Emerald Coast waters. I don't know if y'all have been down here before, but you're just never mad. You're not in the rat race, and you're not driving in traffic. And so it was a really good move for our family to grow here together. And a lot of different hits on my background led us to where we are now. But it's been fun.
What point was it? Because it's so fun hearing your story. It sounds very like organic, and it just sort of happened, and you're following you said little hits here and there and green lights. But has come out of it is a really interesting product and position around the sustainability and the grown aspect and the utilizing local sources, and then of course the paper bottles. So, and we'll get to the packaging because that's a whole thing. But what how along there were you concerned about sustainability? Did it just sort of happen, or was it a natural thing for you? Or did at the beginning were you like, but we got to do it so that's like, it's got this like sustainable aspect to it? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we love camping, hiking, growing up outdoors, all that stuff. Nature and these kind of environments mean a lot to not just myself, my brother-in-law's family, my sister and their family, and everyone that we're a part of. Our community here is a wonderful community that it's not a forced sustainability or forced go green kind of thing. This is just kind of how we are, right? We have for a few years in a row, our beach down here was rated the #1 beach in the world and the U.S. by Dr. Beach from Forbes, and that means everything from pollution, plastics in the water, animals that make their habitats here and preserving that, and the state parks that we have along the beaches that allow, the protection of these kind of gems that we have down here. And so we're paddleboarding, working with other companies that believe in sustainability as well. Everyone from, a local coffee place, that's now a zero carbon company, to one of our friends, he owns a surfboard and bike shop using sustainability products. Along the way, we're making these efforts to be more sustainable. Some of them are very meaningful, and this is what we're going to do. It's a little bit harder. And then some of them were just natural. This sustainable aspect makes the most sense. So when we're making our product, our vodka, we use 100% locally grown corn. We're working with farmers using non-GMO, non-pesticide corn. That was a conscious choice. When we get that corn in, we do all the mashing, milling, everything in-house. Then when we mash in all that spent grain that we have, we actually collect it, put it on a trailer. We have local farmers that come pick that trailer up and they feed their cattle with it. The water that we use to cool down our equipment is a shallow well that we pump out of the ground, that comes out of the ground about 65 degrees. We cool our equipment down with it, and we then recool, because that water gets pretty hot, cooling down 200-degree equipment and steam. We actually cool that water back down and put it back into the water table. So we put it back into our retention pond, and therefore we're not wasting any of that water that cools our equipment or anything. There was a lot of choices along the way. That one was not a, hey, this is sustainable. It's great that it is, but it's like, well, no, this just makes the most sense.
Your resources like efficiently.
Yeah, we're not going to get a whole glycol system in here that's going to cost us money. It cools the equipment down, of course, but it's not working for us the way that this water does. So that was a choice of like, no, this just makes the most sense. So a lot of our choices that we're doing, yes, this is the way we need to go, kind of bump up that sustainability, but also, hey, this is the path of least resistance, and it just happens to be way more sustainable than the other options. Everything from our filtration system, we use oyster shells and coconut carbon. That coconut carbon is waste from coconut trees, coconut husks that farms use, and they reuse that. They burn it down, and we get that coconut carbon. The oyster shells we get from either local restaurants or, there's plenty of little oyster shuckers around here that do private events. We'll get their oyster shells and use that for filtration. A lot of these choices we make, we are consciously and actively being sustainable in every single thing that we do. That's just not the case. It's really hard to do that in 2024, unfortunately. But we try to make the right decisions for us and for our company, and and really try and make an impact, whether it's small or big. I think being able to make the smaller impacts kind of paves way for those bigger ones.
Do you feel like along the way, maybe people in the industry would say, why are you doing it that way? That's not efficient, or that's not the way it's done.
Absolutely.
It sounds like you guys are really creative and pioneering and establishing practices in the industry that end up being, what would you say, more cost effective? more efficient. Tell us about some of those maybe encounters or things that you were maybe advised, don't do it that way because, and y'all just went on. Where are you all sort of leading?
Absolutely. Obviously, everyone has their own opinions. I'm sure y'all realize that even with what y'all are doing. And it is funny because the distilling industry and the spirits industry is so diverse. I mean, you're talking about people that were 20 years in nuclear engineering and switched over to start distilling. You're seeing people that like us who, just in the backyard having some fun and ramped up into this lifestyle. Everyone has a completely different way of how they do it. All similar, right? The distillation process is 8th grade chemistry at the end of the day. But it is funny. We'll do tours and have some distillers come in and ask about the hardcore science of it. If you meet me and David, my brother-in-law, it's kind of like, I don't really know the science behind it, but this is how it works for us, and this is how we're doing it. And so, yeah, you do get people, hey, that might not be the most efficient way. A big example is when we're mashing in, what that means is we're cooking that corn and breaking out the sugars with water. A lot of people will just pump that slurry and start fermenting it with the grain, then pump that into their still, and they'll distill with that grain still in there. We take the grain out and feed it to cows and pigs and stuff like that. And, it would be more efficient, easier, time consuming, all that stuff to just pump everything over and not deal with it. So there are things like that. There's all kinds of things that I'm sure if we had, some of these incredible distillers out there come in there and they wouldn't know how to work our product and we wouldn't know how to work theirs, but that's okay. That's what makes our industry so fun. Everyone's doing something a little bit different and putting their own touches on it. As far as cost effective, I'm sure we could probably tighten the reins a little bit, but we've gotten to this really good flow with what we're doing that this is just our way of doing things.
And the half shell vodka, does that come from the oyster filtration?
Yeah, it does. The oyster is down here. We're on the Gulf Coast. There's oyster bars every couple of miles down the beach. And even oyster farmers and people make their living off of farming oysters down here. And so it's a big part of our community. The oyster itself is such an amazing animal. It is our filtration for our oceans and our Gulf here. They're usually at the bays and mouths of rivers. Any dirt coming out of the river from the mainland feeding into our Gulf and oceans, those oysters actually filter everything. They take everything out of that water and put clean water into our oceans. They're an amazing animal that way, and their byproduct, one, they're super yummy and delicious, but also they give you these beautiful pearls from that too. So it's like, it's a great mascot for us saying, hey, we're taking this corn growing out of the ground and we're going to give you our pearl, which is our vodka. That's where the name Half Shell came from.
I love it. And tell us about the paper bottle. What the heck?
Yeah, so I would say late 2020, obviously COVID happened and, supply chains, all this stuff was going on within our industry and the microbrewing industry. The distilling industry is probably about 3-4 years behind the breweries as far as trends in the market. You hear little ruffles of what's going on in microbrewing and you're like, okay, is that going to affect us in a couple of years? A really big one that happened during that time was aluminum cans for small microbreweries. There was talks throughout the whole market of, unless you're putting in 1 million can orders, you're not going to be able to get aluminum cans. There's a bunch of micro distilleries or breweries that are our friends, and they're all worried, and they're like, do we need to team up, buy cans together? And all the while I'm listening to this, I'm like, what happens if that's glass? What happens if we can't get the glass because, we're not putting in these monster orders, some of these big guys are doing. And, what happens when they come and say, hey, I can't give you any glass bottles? That would be terrible for us. Being 2022 at that point, I'm 30, a millennial, and I'm like, it's 2022. How is there no other options? I don't know if you can relate with that at all. We grew up with so much stuff of just being instantly into our, access and being able to say, oh, that makes more sense. Let's grab that item instead. We're just like, what's the deal here? How is there nothing out there besides glass or aluminum? We don't want to put our products in aluminum. And if we have this problem with glass, what do we do? And that's when we found this paper bottle being produced in the UK. It was they were a one-year company, Frugal Pack, out of the UK. So I want to give shout outs to them because, they obviously made this happen. They were making other products at the time, all sustainability products. They came out with the Frugal bottle, mostly for wine. When it first launched, that's what they were gearing it towards. I saw this, I held the bottle for the first time, and I was just blown away. I was like, this is exactly what I had envisioned in my head. And, it's kind of those, throw it out to the universe and it comes back to you of why is there no other option? So we got this bottle, and I called Malcolm and Paula up there in the UK, and I was like, hey, my name's Harrison, and I saw your bottle, and I want to put my vodka in it. I live in Florida. And they're just like, what are you talking about? They were just as shocked and what are you talking about as I was when I saw it. And so formed a good relationship with those guys, got some product in, helped them do some initial testings on high proof spirits and if this was a good product for us, and a complete game changer. Being able to see this product, hold it, fill it, okay, this thing works. We can actually start using this. We can start working it. And it's been a blessing for Distillery 98. I mean, I don't think we would be around if we didn't find this bottle. We definitely wouldn't be making the moves. We're in California. We're at Whole Foods in California. You can purchase our bottle there.
Wow.
You can purchase us in Florida. So there's these opportunities that we have now. There's not a chance that we would have had these opportunities before. So that was kind of our journey to find the bottle. It's like this. This is where we are now, and this is something that it's going to work for Distillery 98 and for Half Shell Vodka.
I want to hear about what it is.
Yeah.
Paper pulp, and is it lined with something? I'm sure everybody listening to this is like, how in the world, is it not leaking, getting moist and falling apart? And so I really want
Absolutely,
to because fascinated with different kinds of packaging and what the creative companies are doing in terms of moving away from plastics.
Yeah, absolutely. The packaging itself, it's incredible, 100% paper. So those are the ones now being manufactured in Canada, and we're working with a company in California, Monterey Wine Company, south of the Bay Area. They're finding American partners that can fulfill that 100% paperboard recycled product on the outside. The inside is a PET liner. It has about 7 times less plastic than your average water bottle. What's really cool about that is the way they manufacture that bag. I don't know the exact technology, but the way it was described to me, it's sprayed on laminate. When it's sprayed on instead of sealed on, it can actually be recycled and reused. And so that was a big thing with all these companies. Where we are in the world, it's really tough to find something else that doesn't work like plastic works. And so there is a little bit of that in there, but the great thing about it is if you have curbside recycling, on the side of our bottle, it shows you specifically how to pull apart the bottle, take off the paper product, put it in its paper, and then that PET liner goes in with your other plastics and everything else. It's really great. It's 6 times less carbon footprint than a glass bottle when manufactured. That's obviously a win for everybody. And even to recycle it, it's less of a carbon footprint. When it comes to glass, there's a bigger carbon footprint to recycle the glass than there is to actually manufacture the glass. A lot of that time, that carbon gets pushed down the line, so it's never really going anywhere. We joke that the best thing you can do with your glass bottles is fill in potholes. It's the best way to reuse those glass bottles. Fill in potholes, and, that's kind of the best thing for them. That paper bottle, super great. You can throw it in the freezer, throw it on your cooler. It's not going to disintegrate on you. Indefinite life shelf on it, so you're not going to, have it on your shelf. And, we hope it doesn't sit there for long on your shelf. But if it does, you're not going to come back to what happened to the bottle, where's it at, and what's all this mess everywhere else. So it is
That's awesome.
it's a great product. The way we describe it, it's like when the iPhones came out. We say, hey, this bottle, just imagine this is iPhone number one. Each year, the technology to manufacture these bottles, the materials that are going in are getting better and better, more sustainable, better for carbon footprints.
We're impressed that you can actually separate the materials because it's so many times, it becomes sort of a marketing thing that, this is a compostable packaging when actually it's just part of it's compostable, and when you throw it away, the materials are commingled, so it actually ends up being in the trash. So, but this product, as you described it, you can actually separate the paper, which is 100% compostable and already from recycled materials, and then the PET plastic can be recycled on its own. So I love that. I think that's really, really innovative.
Yeah, we try to be very open about that. Again, we're not saying that this is a perfect product and 100%, we want people to try it. We want people to see it, and we want feedback on it. That's the only way it's going to get better. Even the glue that they use to glue the paper together, that's all good glue. It's stuff that if you are composting, you can put it in there. It's biodegradable. So they're very, very conscious about how they're making these bottles and what goes into it.
And I think there's certainly a consumer base. I'm one of them that would be, so delighted to have a product where you can do that, and take the time to separate, and because it just feels good. And once you're, if you're immersed in this and you're talking about it all the time, then it's just so refreshing to have something that actually works that way. And in terms of not being perfect, it's a long way in the right direction.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting too. You bring up about the glass because there's so many things like that. I feel like when you get down into the sustainability and you're really looking at items and materials and you're really thinking about what does sustainability even mean about that, and glass is just one of those things that we hardly even think about because it comes from a natural thing and it can be recycled and it's so reusable. But just like anything else, it's also not perfect. And that's so funny about using glass to fill potholes. In our house, they collect in a box where I say I'm going to make candles and I don't. Anyways, on the glass thing, it's interesting that you were really hung up on the glass supply chain. And I can relate to that feeling of, I feel like it can be anything, but once you get into something that's in manufacturing or supply chain, whatever it is, and I'm sure you see this with pretty much everything else now too, you think about things so differently, just all of the different steps that it takes to make a product, and honestly, all of the things that depend on other things, and it's really mind-boggling.
Well, our old glass bottle that we use, we were using a company, they were manufacturing it out of Missouri, and then that plant closed down right before COVID, and they were moving that plant over to India. Well, then COVID happened, and that plant wasn't finished, and so there was just this, this glass. What's going on here? What's going? What are we going to do? And so, I continue to buy glass. Well, now I'm buying it from India or China, so it's got to be loaded onto a ship. It's got to be shipped over here. So we're talking however much carbon that it takes for them to ship that over here, for them to truck it to a drop off and drop it to us, where it's, I make one phone call, and right now, which is even more amazing, we're working with the distillery out in California that's going to help us using the same tactics that we're using to help with our supply chain. Well, they're a 2-hour drive to where our bottle's being manufactured, so
wow,
putting it onto a truck, you're using less weight because the bottles don't weigh much, so that truck can drive further using less fuel. So there's so much stuff that this bottle does on the back end and front end of reducing carbon besides the bottle itself. There's
Right.
so many wins that you have that goes. And, we even worked with Malcolm and the guys from Frugal. Even if we were still buying glass from Missouri and we were still buying bottles from the UK, the bottles that get transported from the UK have a less of a carbon footprint than the bottles manufactured in Missouri and driven down to Florida. I mean, it's
That's so
incredible.
interesting.
It's incredible how much, we're trying to combat just from one single product.
Is it true that there's like a global sand shortage?
I'm not sure about
Do you
that.
know anything about that?
I don't, but you kind of touched on it a little bit where, people that have this like-minded of, hey, I want to help a little bit. Obviously I can't reduce
Mm-hmm.
all carbons out of my lifestyle, but I can make
Mm-hmm.
some conscious efforts here and there. Well, what else do you have besides glass? So I think that
Mm-hmm.
has a lot to do with it, where a lot of these sustainable products are now coming with glass. Maybe there's a sand shortage. I'm not too sure, but it wouldn't surprise
Yeah,
me.
I'm gonna research that because you make glass out of sand, right? Am I
Yeah,
making that up? No.
yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
yeah.
So
So that's one of the things people don't think about, like a sand shortage, really?
about the glass, I would argue that if there's a hierarchy of materials, I would think obviously something that biodegrades, compostable, paper would be high on the list. I would choose glass over plastic any day, and I do that often because, to your point, Harrison, there has to be something else, but so many times there's not. It's
Yeah,
either glass or plastic, and lots of times you have to look hard to find something in glass instead of plastic. But here's my bottom line rule, and maybe I'm not completely informed on that, but glass is a natural material, and the earth
yeah,
will eventually digest glass in some way or in another. And true, our methods of recycling it and using it again are really, energy intensive and not very efficient. So there are big problems there. But in the end, way down the road, the earth can deal with it. The earth does not have a way of dealing with, plastic. So, so anyway, I just wanted
exactly.
to say that it's
I
a
mean,
hierarchy there. Yeah.
even with glass, I'm sitting here bashing it, but it's so reusable, right? If you have a mason jar and you fill up some water with it, you can just throw that in the dishwasher or hand wash it and reuse it, right? So,
Hmm.
I've gone to a gas station, gotten a bottle of water, but when I'm done with it, I'm not like, oh, well, let me just refill this with my, out of my sink and I'll just use this bottle for the next month. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this is
And
trash. Like, you're getting
you shouldn't.
Yeah.
microplastics, all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff. That was a big
Yeah.
thing we wanted to get away with, or get away from, was not having microplastics inside of our
Hmm.
spirit by going to a plastic water bottle or a plastic
Right.
bottle.
Hmm.
Aluminum's the number one recycled material on the planet. When you start putting spirits in it, there's kind of that metallic taste. There's just stuff in there that's not great when it comes to our product. And so that's, again, those were just like, okay, we don't want aluminum, we don't want plastic. What if we can't even get glass? So it's like, what are we
Hmm.
doing here? Like, how is there no other
So,
option in our
yeah.
time and place in the world? Like, because there's options for everything, right? It's like, why is there not
Hmm.
another option for us? And we
You were
found this
thinking
paper bottle, and it's great.
outside the bottle.
Hey,
Outside the
there you
bottle,
go.
yes.
There, you love
I
it.
Good one,
I
Mom.
I want to know why this hasn't spread further. I mean, this thing exists. Is that it just seems to be such a tiny little niche? This one company in the UK, and they're making some of it in Canada and so forth. But it seems like this.
And were you the
Yeah.
first, like the first people to put like liquor in it? Or
So
because
we
you said it
were
was for wine.
Yeah, we were the first ones to put a spirit in it, first ones to bring this technology into the U.S. and start, selling it and manufacturing it here in the U.S. And so, I think there's a couple of reasons why it hasn't kind of made the moves that we were thinking. You are starting to see a bigger trend towards it. I'm talking with the guys from the UK. We've been approached. We have the whole filling system at our distillery, so we've been approached to put some spirits in there. It's kind of that thing. People are just they're scared of what they don't know. and they're just so used to, hey, well, this is how we do it. We put glass is fine with us. We can get cheap glass. We can, it's no problem for us. And that's their choices. And thankfully, everyone gets to have their own free will and choices. For us, we were we were trying to find our way in this industry. I think we produce great spirits where we are. We have a great local following and customer base, and this was just something that I didn't step into this product and be like, hey, I'm going to be the leader for this product and the champion and everything like that, but I'm kind of finding myself in this market. We went out to San Francisco for the Bulk Spirit and Wines show out there for a weekend, and I have my bottle and I'm showing people, and they're like, I've seen this bottle, I've seen your product, and they're holding it. They're like, this is cool. So it's a point where like, they haven't touched it, they don't feel it, they just see like, oh, paper bottle, whatever, I'm in my lane, I'm doing my thing, and then you show them it and they're like, what? They have the same reaction. Their eyes get big and they're like, why is there not more people doing this? And so there's little reasons like that. I don't think specific spirits like whiskey or wine, the red wine, people, or rosé, people want to see that color through the bottle. So that's why I think obviously glass is great container for those kind of spirits. They want that on their shelf. For vodka, everyone knows what they're going to get. Let's put a great spirit inside of this amazing bottle, and we think we have something here. And so it's been great for us. Obviously, being able to move into California has been kind of a dream come true for me. My wife's from there; she's from the Bay Area, and so being able to kind of tell all of our friends out there, hey, you don't have to come to Florida to buy our product. You can go to Whole Foods right down the road and grab a bottle. So.
And pretty soon people will be saying, we heard you on the Good Dirt podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be
Thinking back historically, people have been fermenting and making spirits for, thousands of years. And I'm trying to think, I guess it was clay vessels, like vessels made of, dirt and earth. And I wonder if there's any innovation in that area.
Yeah, fermentation, there's definitely still spirits out there like soju from Korea. If you go to Korea, they still do it the traditional way, fermenting in those jars in the dirt. You go to vineyards and they're fermenting in those clay jars still. It kind of moved into oak barrels and being able to age inside of those. So I think for the most part, there is a tequila brand out there, now that I think about it, that does have like a really cool clay, I can't remember the name of it, a really cool clay packaging that they do. But, I unfortunately, I think it's probably just too expensive to be able to sustain that.
Yes, the scalability always becomes an issue. Speaking of scalability, are you guys interested in, getting bigger, or you just feel like it's nice and sustainable where you are and you're doing okay? How are you feeling about that?
We have a wonderful distributor, Breakthrough Beverage. They're in 13 states in Canada, and they're growing pretty well. And so, we're moving into the markets that make sense for us right now. Obviously California, Florida. We're looking at Colorado and, any of those kind of states that have that active lifestyle, that sustainability lifestyle.
I wanted to ask you, going back to the beginning, kind of circling back to the beginning before we wrap up here, you mentioned moving your family to 30A, which I know well because we actually never went to 30A. We're more like South Carolina, North Carolina beach people. But I grew up outside of Atlanta, and a lot of like culturally, all the families go to 30A for their beach. Anyways, we've yet to go, but sounds like we need to go to Great Beach. But all that to say, I know a lot about it, and you mentioned that moving there was good for your family, and like it was slower and you're not stressed. So we talk a lot about slow living on this podcast, and we like to ask all of our guests, what does slow living mean to you? And how do you feel like you live that out?
Yeah, I think really the the main things that I think has been beneficial for us is, one, having all of our family here together is great. So we can have that family time. And then there's this whole mindset. If you've never lived in a beach town, it's a different world than most places. I mean, that's just kind of how the mindset kind of goes into it, to where it's like, hey, it's 5 o'clock. Okay, well, everywhere shut down. People are on the beach, or they're paddleboarding, or they're fishing, or they're hiking and enjoying nature. It's just kind of this slow paced moving society down here where someone cuts you off, you're like, whatever, it's we're driving down to the beach, or it's like, oh my gosh, there's 4 cars in front of me for a stop sign. You're like, what am I complaining about? Like, we're at a stop sign. Like, like, there's the Gulf right there. And so it is nice to be able to kind of get grounded and kind of slow down a little bit, to where it is just a little slow paced. And that's what it means to us, to kind of slow down a little bit.
Speaking of the Gulf, are you?
How are
did
you?
y'all do, are you okay?
Yeah.
After Milton and Helene
And what's that
Man.
like? Like, I guess you have to incorporate
Yeah.
all of this new
Yeah,
reality into,
we're so lucky where we live. Like, I mean, since 2018, Hurricane Michael hit Panama City. That was a Category 5. That was about 30 miles from us. And we were on the good side of the hurricane, right? On that western side, where we get some wind and some stuff like that, but it's not like getting hit on that east coast, that east side of a hurricane. And for Helene specifically, we know people that left because there was kind of this uncertainty of where it was going to hit.
Yeah.
It hit about 3 hours east of us. And, it is one of those things that, you have to consciously think about. Growing up on the Gulf Coast, it's kind of always been a part of my life, really, just being aware, okay, it's hurricane season, make sure that instead of spring cleaning, we have hurricane season cleaning. You clean up stuff in the yard, or, just make sure everything's ready just in case. But you also kind of have this piece where it's like, if God forbid we get hit by Category 5, there's just nothing you can do about it. Just take your loved ones, do what you can, and just get out of its way and hope for the best. And thankfully, tracking them, education on them has come so far in the last 5 to 10 years that you just be smart about it and just hope for the best. But at the end of the day, if your family are safe, that's kind of the mentality you have to have.
So there's one more question we like to ask all.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the podcast is called The Good Dirt.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like open to interpretation. So we always like to know for all of our guests, what does the good dirt mean to you?
Man, the good dirt, I guess, kind of growing up in rural parts of Texas, and, I mean, we're pretty rural here. I would say the good dirt to me means, this sounds kind of corny, but kind of good life and the ability to grow a good life from good dirt. And I think that's so important when, even if you're at home in your backyard growing some stuff, that you can't grow it in sand, can't grow it in clay. And, when you have that good dirt, you have that good things happen. And so I think that's a huge thing for not just for sustainability, but for life itself. Kind of corny,
I love
but
that.
Very
I
good.
think,
You're a vodka guy, so it's corny.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so awesome. Thank you. And now
course.
I think I'd love the download on where can people find you? How can people get your vodka? Do you ship? If people want to get their vodka in their local store, how does that all work? How can people, I guess, get Half Shell Vodka?
Yeah, absolutely. First, we'd love, I know Allie, and who works at the distillery. She runs all of our marketing. I'm sure she's been contacting with you guys. And then my wife does social media. So I know they would appreciate it if I said, hey, reach out, follow us on all of our social media programs, because they put a lot of work into it. And so give them some love, because they rock. But you can find us, if you're in California, you can find us at all Whole Foods in the state of California. We're working on
Wow,
a
that's
few
cool.
other places out there in California, strictly in that Northern Bay area. In the state of Florida, you can find us at Total Wines, and kind of scattered throughout the whole state. You can go to our website, halfshellvodka.com. It has a map on there that you can kind of zoom in and click, and it shows you the exact retailer, whether it's a liquor store or a restaurant. And then starting this month, you will actually be able to order directly on our website. So it'll ship to your doorstep. And the best thing people can do is just, ask your local liquor store, ask your bartenders, all that kind of stuff for Half Shell. A lot of those guys will know how to find it, or, the questions that they need to ask on how to get it there.
Cool. And then one more time, you did a lovely shout out to your socials, but you didn't say what the handle is. So what is the social handle?
Yeah, so Half Shell Spirits is our Instagram, and then Half Shell Vodka is our TikTok. Those are our two ones that we really put a lot of work into. You can find us on Facebook. That's mostly for events and, things that we're doing locally, kind of stories that we like to share. But also, I need to go back to our website because it's really cool. On that website, it has a bunch of companies that we work with, whether they do oyster restorations or beach cleanups or anything like that. You can go onto our website and you can click there. It goes to their website and you can donate on their website. So we don't take any donations from them because we don't want people to go, hey, is 100% of my donation going to there, or are they keeping some? So we like to prop up those companies that we work with, and some of them are local, some of them are national, but they're companies that we think are doing the right stuff, specifically for environmental cleanup, beach cleanup, oyster restorations. So check out our website, check out those companies because they're fighting the good fight as well.
Cool.
Right. So
Thank you, Harrison. I can't wait to try it.
So, Harrison, this has been great. So interesting. I'm excited to try Half Shell Vodka, really, truly. So, yeah, thanks so much for...
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on. Y'all are a blast. I know you throw us in a room, I feel like we could talk and have fun all day. So, I can't wait to go back and hear more of y'all's stuff. But just thank y'all again for the time and the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in, calling in, and spreading the good dirt. We love hearing from you. You can reach our listener voicemail at 443-459-1950. That's 443-459-1950. You can find this number in our show notes and in our Instagram profile.
This show is produced by Lady Farmer, a slow living lifestyle community, and the original music is composed and performed by John Kingsley.
For more from Lady Farmer, follow us on Instagram at We Are Lady Farmer. That's We Are Lady Farmer. Or join us online at www.ladyfarmer.com. We'll see you next time on The Good Dirt.
Goodbye.